Joining me now, Rasmus Jarlov. He's a conservative member of Denmark's parliament and chair of its defense committee. Thanks so much for joining.
Hello, Jim. Thank you.
So first, I'd like your reaction to seeing Denmark, a NATO treaty ally, looking across the Atlantic at the U.S. and seeing a potential threat. Tell me how the two countries got here.
We've had great relations with the United States for centuries, and we have appreciated the relations we had since the Americans helped liberate Europe and our country in the Second World War. And we've been very loyal allies to each other for the past 80 years. We've participated in all the major U.S.-led wars in Korea, in the Gulf, and many other places in Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on. So it's not great that now we're receiving threats regarding Greenland, which is the main concern from a Danish point of view.
Yeah. Listen, as I've reminded viewers and others, Denmark did some of the hardest combat duty in Afghanistan as well and lost many of its soldiers and quite a large percentage of Denmark's overall forces there. As you know, there are many in this country who disagree with the U.S. president on its approach to Denmark, including both Democratic and Republican lawmakers. Do you believe there is anything standing in the way of President Trump continuing to antagonize Denmark? So, I mean, my question is this just about President Trump, or do you believe the entire country, in effect, has turned against Denmark?
No, we don't believe the entire United States of America has turned against Denmark or against Europe. We know very well that there's a lot of different opinions in the American public. And we've also seen polls citing that there's not a majority of the population that agrees with the idea of starting a war with Denmark to take over Greenland that doesn't want to be part of the United States. So I would hope that reason would stand in the way of this happening. And we hope we can also appeal to the Americans' self-interest. It's not about just loyalty to allies. It's also about self-interest, that there's no need to have bad relations across the Atlantic. We want to have good relations with Americans. We think it's very beneficial to both countries, and the Americans have access to everything they could possibly want in Greenland, including natural resources, military access, and everything else. They already have it. So there is no need for any type of military action or any threat of taking over the country in any other way.
At least on paper, the U.S. and Denmark remain treaty allies. They're both members of NATO. But now you have Denmark looking to the U.S. as a potential threat. Can those two things be true at the same time? Or is the reality that that alliance doesn't truly exist anymore?
No, let's not take it that far. I mean, we have NATO, and we have not heard the Americans not wanting to be part of NATO or not wanting to honor the NATO oath. So let's not take it as far as saying that we don't have NATO anymore and we're not allies. We are allies. We are in NATO together, and we have sworn an oath to fight for each other if that should be necessary. We already did it in Afghanistan when the United States invoked the NATO Article 5 as the only country in NATO's history. So we already went there and fought for the Americans. And the Americans definitely fought for us in the Second World War. So I think we owe each other some gratitude. I think we owe the Americans more gratitude than the other way around. And we understand that. We also understand that Americans are tired of paying too much money to protect Europe. That's fair enough. But it shouldn't develop into animosity and belittling each other and talking about how Europeans want to end freedom of speech and other things that are being said at the moment that simply are not true. We share the same values. We should be allies. It's much better for both Europe and the United States.
But given the national security strategy and the harsh words that it had for Europe, and frankly less harsh words about Russia, do you see the U.S. under President Trump leaning towards Russia and away from its NATO allies?
I mean, you can't reasonably say that the Americans are supporting Russia. The Americans have sanctions against Russia. They don't have sanctions against Europe. So they're not supporting Russia. But of course, we would want them to take the war in Ukraine more seriously. We just read the new American security strategy that came out last week, where it says basically that the Europeans should calm down and not be so afraid of Russia. we are very, very concerned about Russia, because once you reward Russia for invading another country and just let them do it, they're going to do it again. They've done it repeatedly over all of their history, and they break every treaty you make with them. So not taking that serious is, we just don't agree with that, and we feel like that's a very, very grave concern for Europeans, as well as the economic attack that was made in Europe at the beginning of this year with the tariffs. Also is a cause of dissatisfaction in Europe, of course. But we still hope we can get it back on track. But of course, there's no denying that the ties have been strained over the past year. We just can't deny that. And we don't mean this in an inflammatory way to say that the United States is a threat. But just objectively, it is a threat when one country wants to take territory from another country.
Rasmus Jarlov, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Jim.